All right, so we're back. Uh, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to the stream. Today we're going to continue our walkthrough through the Anthropic Academy course material, breaking down AI coding concepts, workflows, and practical applications. I do appreciate everybody that's taking the time to join me for this stream, hang out, ask questions, and contribute to the discussion. The goal here is to learn, build, and improve together while navigating this fast-moving AI space. So let's get started. So today we're going to be going through Claude Code 101. This looks like a short uh, course. We'll only go for about an hour, so we'll get through as much as possible. We'll stop at the hour mark, and we'll just pick up where we left off during next Saturday stream. So let's get started. So, Module 1, what is Claude Code? Lesson 1, what is Claude Code? So it looks like we're going to start with a video. Let's watch that. All right, let's start.
Claude Code is an agentic coding tool that understands your codebase, edits your files, runs commands, and integrates with your existing developer tools to help you get things done faster. It's available in your terminal, Visual Studio Code, the Claude desktop app, on the web, and JetBrains IDEs. But we'll be using it in the terminal for this video. If you've ever used Claude AI, you're probably wondering what the difference is between the two. Unlike Claude AI, Claude Code has direct access to your files, your terminal, and your entire codebase. So instead of copying and pasting code back and forth, it can go in and do all the work itself. The easiest differentiator is that Claude Code works as an AI agent. An AI agent is a software that can interact with its environment and perform actions to complete a defined goal. The most basic way this can be done is by having a large language model in a loop in real time. AI agents have access to things like tools, external services, or other AI agents to help it reach its predefined goals. So what does that actually look like? Well, here's a couple of examples. It can read and understand your code base. You can ask Claude Code to explain a feature or trace a bug throughout your code. Claude Code can execute your build script, run your tests, install packages, and use the output to decide what to do next. Claude Code can search the web. If it needs documentation on the latest API references, for example, it can do that for you. To use Claude Code effectively, it's important to know these concepts. First is the context window. Think of this as Claude's working memory. It can hold a lot, but not everything at once. This is where the agentic aspect of it comes in, finding strategic ways to find the answers within your codebase without storing your entire codebase into context. Second is that it asks for permission. By default, Claude Code will ask you before running commands or making changes to your codebase. You're always in control, whether that's being more hands-on or passive. Third, it can make mistakes. Just like any tool, Claude Code isn't perfect. It might misunderstand your intent, introduce a new bug, or over-engineer a solution. Quick recap. Claude Code is an agentic coding tool. It reads your codebase, edits your files, runs commands, and connects to external tools to help you ship faster. You can download it today in your terminal, VS Code, JetBrains, and the Claude desktop app.
Did this thing said it was built for hackers?
Ship faster. You can download it
Built for
today in your
hackers,
terminal, VS Code,
Okay. So, what is Claude Code? Claude Code is an agentic coding tool that understands your code base, edits your files, runs commands, and integrates with your existing developer tools to help you get things done faster. It's available in your terminal, Visual Studio Code, and Claude desktop app on the web and on JetBrains IDE. So with that. All right, so what separates Claude Code from Claude? If you've used Claude.ai before, you might be wondering what makes Claude Code different. Unlike Claude.ai, Claude Code has direct access to your files, your terminal, and your entire code base. Instead of copying and pasting code back and forth, it goes in and does the work itself. The key differentiators is that Claude Code works as an AI agent. So, what is an AI agent? An AI agent is software that can interact with its environment and perform actions to complete a defined goal. At its core, this works by having a large language model operating in a loop in real time. AI agents can have access to tools, external services, or even other AI agents to help it reach their goals. So, what can Claude Code actually do? Here's what that looks like in practice. First, it reads and understands your code base. You can ask Claude Code to explain a feature or trace a bug throughout your code. Second, it edits files across your project. Claude Code can refactor a function and update every file that references it. Third, it runs terminal commands. It can execute your build script, run your tests, install packages, and use the output to decide what to do next. And finally, it searches the web. If it needs documentation or the latest API references, it can look that up for you. So, using Claude Code effectively. To use Claude Code effectively, keep these three concepts in mind. First, the context window. Think of this as Claude's working memory. It can hold a lot, but not everything at once. This is where the agentic aspect comes in. Claude finds strategic ways to locate answers within your code base without loading the entire thing into context. Second, it asks for permission. By default, Claude Code will ask you before running commands or making changes. You are always in control, whether you prefer a hands on or hands off approach. And finally, it can make mistakes. Just like any tool, Claude Code isn't perfect. It might misunderstand your intent, introduce a bug, or over engineer a solution. Staying in the loop helps you catch these early. So here's the recap. Claude Code is an agentic coding tool. It reads your code base, edits your files, runs commands, and connects to an external tool to help you ship faster. You can use it today in your terminal, VS Code, JetBrains, and the Claude desktop app. So we have another video.
We know that Claude Code is different from usual chat applications, but how does it work? Claude Code is best explained through
Actually, let me see if I can get that. What the heck? Interesting. So whatever the heck that is, it's just
the
there.
agentic loop. You enter a prompt into Claude Code. Claude Code will then gather context required to complete your prompt. It does so by interacting with the model, which will return text, or a tool call that Claude Code can execute. Then it takes action. For example, editing a file or running a command. Finally, it verifies those results and determines if they achieve what your prompt set out to do in the first place. If they do, then Claude finishes and waits for the next prompt. And if they don't, Claude goes back and runs the loop again until the results are complete and verifiable. Throughout this loop, you're able to add context, interrupt it, or steer the model to help guide it towards your end goal. Claude has a context window, which determines how much of your conversation, file contents, command outputs, and more it can store and look back on. Once you reach that limit, Claude Code compacts your conversation, which automatically determines what it can take out of the context window and what it can summarize in order to bring the context window back down. Tools are the backbone of how agents work. Currently, most AI assistants are simply input text and output text. Nothing in between. Tools let Claude Code and other agents determine when to execute code to get closer to a task. This could be read file tool or search web tool, for example. Claude Code uses semantic searching to determine when to call a tool and get the output of it. Claude Code also has permission modes. Default behavior is that it has to ask explicit permission before editing a file or running a shell command.
You can use Shift and Tab to toggle between different modes.
Auto accept edits files without asking but still asks for commands. Plan mode uses read-only tools to help compile a plan of action before starting. It's worth being cautious when skipping permissions. Giving Claude Code free rein to run commands means a mistake could be harder to catch before it even happens. Claude Code works by combining different agentic concepts: an agentic loop, a managed context window, tools, and configurable permissions into your terminal. It can read your codebase, take action, and verify its own work, and that makes it fundamentally different from a chat window.
Yeah, what's up, Nelly? You know what, Nelly? I think all firms are like that. Every single one. There's Lucid. Yeah, I think Lucid, Tradeify, and supposedly Top Step has like after your sixth payout, they put you in a live account. If you make a lot of money, if you make over $10,000, if you make a high figure amount, they usually put you into an account as soon as possible. You said, what are my thoughts on Top Step? Uh, I like the platform. I like the risk settings that the platform offers. Uh, that's and I like that they've reduced their prices. Now the prices are reasonable. Uh, so that's mostly what I trade is Top Step. Uh, Another one of my firms that I liked, or another favorite firm that I like to trade with, is Lucid and Tradeify. Lucid before Tradeify, but I really like Lucid. Tradeify, I like them too. So, but yeah, okay, all right. So, how does Claude Code works? Claude Code is different from typical chat applications. Understanding how it works under the hood will help you use it more effectively. So, the agentic loop. Claude Code is best explained through the agentic loop. First, you enter a prompt into Claude Code. Second, Claude gathers the context it needs by interacting with the model, which returns text or a tool call that Claude Code can execute. Third, it takes action, for example, editing a file or running a command. Fourth, it verifies the results and determines whether they achieve what your prompt set out to do. And finally, if they do, Claude finishes and waits for the next prompt. If they do not, it loops back and tries again until the results are complete and verifiable. Throughout this loop, you can add context, interrupt, or steer the model to help guide it towards your goal. Yeah, no problem. Context. And I mean, once we get through this, we could talk about it. Um, I believe these firms they present a real business opportunity, allows you to not risk your money in these unpredictable markets. As long as you're following a rule, you get more capital for cheap. You get $50,000 of buying power, which has $2,000 of drawdown for $89, which you really can't beat that. You just have to follow a set of rules, and at the at once you complete those tasks, you're able to withdraw profits that you can put into your own personal account that you can trade on the side. So this is a real. I mean, if you treat it like a business, these firms are seeing it as a business. You're seen as a contractor. They give you, I think, a 1044. Don't quote me on that. They give you a tax document. Let me just say that. They give you a tax document that you have to file at the end of the year because you're considered a contractor. I think with Top Step, you're considered an analyst, I think is what they call it. So this is a business, and you can venture out from trading, and you can turn this into an affiliate business if you want. I do have an affiliate code, but that's not my focus. I prefer to trade. I prefer to have all my focus on trading. I do appreciate people that use my affiliate link, but that's not my goal. I don't want to be rewarded for helping out another business grow. I want to be rewarded for building my own business. So just keep that in mind. All right, so the context. So Claude has a context window that determines how much of your conversation, file content, command outputs, and more it can store and reference. Interesting. Once you reach that limit, Claude Code compacts your conversation, automatically determining what it can remove or summarize to bring the context window back down to a usable size. Tools. Tools are the backbone of how agents work. Most AI assistants simply take text in and return text out. Tools like Claude Code determine when to execute code to get closer to completing a task. This could be a file reading tool, a web search tool, or any number of other capabilities. Claude Code uses semantic understanding to determine when to call a tool and how to use the output. Permission. Claude Code has several permission modes. First, the default behavior. Claude asks for explicit permissions before editing a file or running a shell command. Second, auto accept. Files are edited without asking, but commands still require approval. And finally, plan mode. Uses read-only tools to comply a plan of action before starting any work. And here's an image that they provided. Can we create a simple test API with TypeScript? It reads the file, it empties the project, it runs the command. And this is where it's asking for approval. And so this is where, it's asking for approval right there. And do you want to proceed? And I guess you say yes or no. Okay. So all of this can be configured in your settings file. Be cautious when skipping permissions. Giving Claude Code free reign to run commands means a mistake could be harder to catch before it happens. This is definitely true. Any security professional will tell you this. You don't want to give Claude too much power. You always want to be the human in the loop when it performs a task because Claude has the access that you grant it, and it will execute a command. And I've seen horror stories. I don't know if they're true horror stories, but if Claude deletes a whole database, that's a very bad day. That's a resume generating event to whoever the person prompted Claude to do that. You don't ever want Claude to delete anything or to update or manipulate anything without you being the human in the loop. So recap. Claude Code combines several agentic concepts, an agentic loop, a managed context window, tools, and configurable permissions, all inside your terminal. It can read your code base, take action, and verify its own work. That's what makes it fundamentally different from a chat window. All right, so installing Claude Code.
Claude Code is simple to install whether you want to use it in your terminal, the web, or your IDE. If you're on Mac OS, Linux, or WSL, use this curl command to install it in one go. If you prefer to use Homebrew, you can also use brew install to install it, but note that this doesn't have auto-update capabilities. For Windows, there's also a couple ways. In PowerShell, use the invoke rest method command. If you're on CMD, you can also use this curl command. We also have a winget command as well if you'd prefer, but just like Homebrew, it won't auto-update. Now go to your project directory and run Claude. You will go through some initial instructions like choosing your color theme and signing in with your Claude account, which could be the Pro, Max, or Enterprise. Or you can use an API key. If your organization has a Claude Enterprise account, be sure to select that option. Whatever directory you decide to run Claude in, it will have access to that directory and all of its subfolders. In Visual Studio Code, open up your extensions panel and search for Claude Code. You will see the extension by Anthropic. Make sure it has the blue check and hit install. After installation, you might need to restart VS Code. After that, you can open up the control palette with Control or Command and Shift and P and search Claude Code. Open a new tab. You can also click on the Claude logo if you see it when a file is open. You can also opt out of the UI and just use the terminal experience directly in your settings file. For JetBrains IDEs, you can install the Claude Code plugin from the JetBrains Marketplace. Once you install, restart your IDE. And when you reopen, you'll see the Claude logo. This will open up a pane where you can see the terminal experience. And this will work alongside you. On Claude Desktop, you can also run Claude Code. After you install Claude Desktop and signed in, you will see a toggle at the top that says Code. The look and feel is similar to Claude Chat side of things, but allows you to work in a specific folder, change permissions, and even work in a cloud environment. On the web, you can access Claude Code by going to claude.ai/code. This works very similar to the desktop app. However, you're restricted to GitHub repositories only. If you want to constantly keep up to date with everything, the terminal is the best bet. Features ship there the fastest. For the most part, you'll have extremely similar experiences with the IDE integrations if you like Claude Code to feel more intertwined with your favorite code editor. Desktop is great for letting Claude run in the background while you run other tasks. Claude Code on the web is a great option if you want to remotely work on a project through a GitHub repository or have multiple sessions work in parallel. However you want to use Claude Code, it's up to you.
Okay. So, installing Claude Code. Claude Code is simple to install whether you want to use it in your terminal, on the web, or in your IDE. In the terminal. On Mac, Linux, or WSL, use the curl command to install it in one go. If you prefer Homebrew, you can also use brew install. But note, this method doesn't support auto updates. On Windows, there is a few options. In PowerShell, you can use the invoke rest method command. In CMD, use the curl command. There's also a winget command available through, though like Homebrew, it won't auto update. After installation, you should be able to run the Claude command. If not, restart your terminal, navigate to your project directory, and run Claude. You'll go through some initial setup steps like choosing your color theme and signing in with your Claude account, Pro, Max, or Enterprise, or using an API key. If your organization has a Claude Enterprise account, be sure to select that option. Whatever directory you run Claude in, it will have access to that directory and all of its subfolders. Visual Studio Code. Open your extensions panel and search for Claude Code. Look for the extension by Anthropic with the blue verification check. Hit install. After installation, you may need to restart VS Code. Once it's running, open the command palette with Control/Command/Shift+P and search for Claude Code. Open in new tab. You can also click the Claude logo if it's visible in your sidebar. And here's a visual representation of what to expect right there. Claude Code for Visual Studio. This is the blue check mark that they're referring to right there. So I don't think Visual Studio Code would have an imposter, but I guess safe than sorry. All right, so VS Code extension provides a very similar experience to the terminal. You can also opt out of the UI and use the terminal experience directly in your settings. JetBrains. Install Claude Code plugin from the JetBrains marketplace. After installation, restart your IDE. When it opens, you'll see a Claude logo. Clicking it opens a pane with the terminal experience that works alongside your editor. And this is what they're referring to right there, I believe. Nope, that's not what they're talking about. Nope. The desktop. And I believe well, of course, I have this downloaded on my desktop. After installing and signing into Claude Desktop, you'll see a toggle at the top labeled Code. The look and feel is similar to the chat side of things, but it lets you work in a specific folder, change permissions, and even work in a cloud environment. The web. On the web, access Claude Code by going to claude.ai/code or by clicking the code label in the sidebar of the chat app. This works similarly to the desktop app, but you are restricted to GitHub repositories. So, which one should you use? If you want to stay on the cutting edge, the terminal is your best bet feature. If you want to stay on the cutting edge, the terminal is your best bet. Features shipped there first. The IDE integration offers a nearly identical experience if you prefer Claude Code to feel more intertwined with your code editor. The desktop is great for letting Claude run in the background while you handle other tasks. Claude Code on the web is a solid option if you want to work remotely on projects through a GitHub repository. However, you want to use Claude Code is up to you. So our first prompt.
You talk to Claude Code like you would talk to any AI assistant. When entering your prompt, here are some things that you can consider that can both protect and make things easier for you. You can choose whether Claude auto-accepts every file change it suggests or require it to ask you for explicit permission each time. With Shift plus Tab, you can cycle between both modes. In auto-accept mode, it will automatically approve an edit or creation of a file, but still ask your permission to run commands. There isn't a right or wrong way. It's just whatever you feel the most comfortable with. Within this Shift tab menu is the Plan mode. Plan mode takes your prompt and uses read-only tools to analyze your codebase and do research on your suggested implementation. It will also ask you questions on items that it wants clarification on. It then returns to you a long, detailed plan that it can execute on in more detail. Plan mode works great for planning complex changes or doing a safe code review. A lot of the time, you're asking Claude to do multi-step implementations towards a feature, and this is exactly what Plan mode excels at. So, why don't we give it a try? I have an application here that desperately needs a dark mode toggle, so I'm going to use Claude Code to implement this for me. So I'm in the root directory of my project. I'm going to hit the Shift tab a couple times to go into Plan mode. Then, let's write out the prompt. My app needs a dark mode implemented across the entire app. Can you create a toggle switch on the header that allows user to toggle between light mode and dark mode? I need you to find a good contrast color that works based on my existing light theme. And let's let Claude plan this out. And after reviewing, I think it looks pretty good. At the end of all this, we can see explicitly what Claude did and how it came to its conclusion. And the dark mode is looking pretty good. Awesome. When using Claude Code, try to be as descriptive as possible with your prompt. If you want to stay in the loop at every step, you can do that. Use Plan mode to let Claude get a little bit more in the nitty-gritty with what you want to achieve before executing on that plan.
Okay. So, our first prompt. We talk to Claude Code like you want any AI assistant. When you're entering your prompt, here are some things to consider that can both protect you and make things easier. Auto accept versus approval. You can choose whether Claude auto accepts every file change it suggests or whether it asks you your explicit permission each time. Press Shift plus Tab to cycle between modes. First, approval mode. Claude asks permission each time it wants to edit a file or run a command. Finally, auto accept mode. File edits are automatically approved, but commands still require your permission. There is no right or wrong answer. It's whatever you're comfortable with. And here they provide an image. So let's look through that. So it looks like, missing input validation, no email format, password strength checks, no uploads. Would you like me to fix the issue? You can fix all critical issues. Can you fix all critical reading files? Okay. Man, y'all grown. Plan mode. With the Shift plus Tab menus in Plan mode takes your prompts and uses read-only tools to analyze your code base and research your suggestion implementations. It will ask clarifying questions along the way. When it returns detailed plan, it can execute. Plan mode is great for planning complex changes or doing a safe code review. Many times you'll be asking Claude to handle multi-step implementations towards a feature. And this is exactly where plan mode excels. So, example, add a dark mode toggle. Let's walk through an example. Say you have an application that needs a dark mode toggle. Open the root directory of your project and run Claude. Press Shift plus Tab a couple of times to enter plan mode. Then write a prompt like, my app needs a dark mode implemented across the entire app. Can you create a toggle switch on the header that allows a user to toggle between light mode and dark mode? I need you to find a good contrast color that works based on my existing light theme. So let Claude plan it out. After reviewing the plan, if it looks good, accept it and let Claude ask you for approval at each step. At the end, you can see exactly what Claude did and how it reached its conclusion. So a recap. When using Claude Code, try to be as descriptive as possible with your prompt. If you want to stay in the loop at every step, you can. Use plan mode to let Claude dig into the details of what you want to achieve before executing any code. All right, so looks like we can probably get this thing done. Well, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can get this done.
If you take one thing away from Claude Code, let it be this workflow: explore, plan, code, and commit. Without this, most people jump straight to asking Claude to write code, which means more course correcting later on. The fastest way to handle step 1 and 2 is with plan mode. With plan mode, Claude can't edit files. It just reads files to gather research on how to tackle its implementation. To enter plan mode, hit Shift and Tab until you see the plan mode under the text input. I need to add WebP conversion to our image upload pipeline. Figure out where in the pipeline it should happen, whether we need new dependencies, and how to approach it. And Claude will read relevant files, do some web searches, and give you a plan of action. Make sure you review it and determine if it meets your criteria. Otherwise, I can ask it to add on or revise some areas. Perfect. And this right here is the best place to course correct because it's before any code is written. You can also use Explore without being in plan mode by just asking Claude to explore your code base. Now, once the plan looks good, you can select Approve to accept the plan and let Claude tackle all of the list items it provided. You can determine if you want Claude to auto-accept the file edits or ask every single time. Claude will do its best to troubleshoot your codebase before considering the plan finished, but at times you'll need to course correct. This is the benefit of working with plan mode, because after the plan is finished, we also have the context of how it got to the results to help it guide its next decision. In order for Claude to be confident in its results, it has to be clear on what it deems correct. When writing your plan, make this explicit. Adding tools that will help Claude complete its goals will remove a lot of back and forth. For example, if you're building web UIs, make sure you have the Claude and Chrome extension so that Claude Code can control a tab and test out the UI before deeming it finished. In your project, include a test suite that Claude can continuously validate on. Claude can even write tests for you. Before passing this off to Claude, make sure that the tests are a source of truth for you and your team to avoid any false positives. Quick tip, if you find Claude keeps running into these same issues, ask Claude to save the solution to its ClaudeMD file. Now, once you have tested for yourself and are happy with the results, it's time to push your code. A tip before you commit, run a subagent code reviewer to look at your code. Then you get Claude to generate a commit message for you in your style. Rinse and repeat. If you want to be effective with Claude Code, follow the explore, plan, code, and commit workflow. Exploration will give the relevant context Claude needs for your project. Plan will create a plan of action that Claude will use to determine if they are successful. Code is the back and forth that you and Claude do before settling on the final outcomes of the plan. Commit helps you review and push your code so you can start on your next feature.
I guess I could just do both. All right. The explore, plan, code, commit workflow. If you take one thing away from this course, let it be this workflow. Explore, plan, code, and commit. Without it, most people jump straight to asking Claude to write code, which means more course correcting later on. Explore and plan. The fastest way to handle these first two steps with plan mode. In plan mode, Claude can edit files. It just reads files to gather information about how it will tackle the implementation. To enter plan mode, press Shift plus Tab until you see the plan mode under the text input. Then write a prompt like, I need to add WebP conversations to our image upload pipeline. Figure out where in the pipeline it should happen, whether we need a new dependencies, and how to approach it. And this is where we see the plan mode right there. Plan mode on. Claude will read relevant files, run some web searches, and gives you a plan of action. Review it and decide if it meets your criteria. If not, ask it to revise specific areas. Mm. And this is the best practice to course correct because it's before any code is written. You can also run the Explorer subagent without being in plan mode if you just want a general summary of your code base without intending to make changes afterwards. The code. Once the plan looks good, select Approve to accept it and let Claude Code work through the list items. You can choose whether Claude auto accepts file edits or ask you each time. Claude will do its best to troubleshoot before considering the plan finished. But at times, you'll need to step in. This is the benefit of working with plan mode. After execution, you also have the context of how you got to the results, which helps guide Claude's next decision. A few tips to make the code phase smoother. First, define a success criteria. For Claude to be confident in its results, it needs to be clear on what's correct looks like. Make this explicit when writing your plan. Finally, add tools. Oh, second, add tools. Tools that help Claude complete its goal removes a lot of back and forth. For example, if you are building web UIs, install the Claude and Chrome extension so Claude Code can control a browser tab and test the UI directly. And they provided a screen capture of what they're talking about in that passage. And finally, include a test suite. Give Claude a test suite it can continuously validate against. Claude can even write tests for you. Before handing this off, make sure the tests are a reliable source of truth to avoid false positives. Here's a quick tip. If you find Claude keeps running into the same issues, ask it to save the solution to its claude.md file. Commit. Once you've tested your changes yourself and you are happy with the results, it's time to push your code. Before you commit, run a subagent code reviewer to look at your work. A subagent gets a fresh pair of eyes on the code base. It doesn't carry the bias the main agent might have from the session. And they provided another screenshot of what they're talking about. Then get Claude to generate a commit message in your style. Rinse and repeat. Recap. To be effective with Claude Code, follow the explore, plan, code, and commit workflows. First, explore. It gives Claude the relevant context it needs for your project. Second, plan. It creates a plan of action that Claude uses to measure success. Third, the code. The code is back and forth between you and Claude before settling on the final outcome. And the commit. It helps you review and push your code so you can start on your next feature.
Context is Claude's working memory. Every file it reads, every command it runs, every message you send, it all takes up space in the context window. Think of the context window as the amount of space that Claude can hold in its memory. Whenever you enter a prompt, Claude reads a file, runs a tool call, gets a tool call result. This is adding on to the context window. And since there's only a finite amount you can put in the context window, it becomes extremely important to optimize this as much as possible. Now, when you approach this limit, the context window is automatically compacted. Compaction will summarize important details and remove the unnecessary tool call results and free up a lot of space in your context window. Do note, though, that this could potentially lose details in your previous conversation. You can run the compaction manually as well with the /compact command. This will compact everything that you've done up to that point, which could be handy if you want to clear up context space, but also have a memory of what you previously worked on. If you want to completely start from scratch without memory of what was previously worked on, you can also run /clear, and that will remove everything, starting from scratch. To check the state of your context, run the /context command. Here you'll get a big picture of how large your context size is, the different categories that are taking up the most context, and a graphic showing you all of this. A general rule of thumb is when you're working on a specific feature and are going over the context window but need to continue, then compact. Keeping the context relevant for this feature is important when continuing development. If you have finished the plan and want to start on a new feature, then clear. You don't want the previous conversation to present bias in anything new that you want to create. For things that you do want Claude to remember in other sessions, put it in the claude.md file. That way, it doesn't have to rediscover things from scratch all over again. Be specific. The irony behind writing a smaller prompt is that in the long run, it will take up more context. Without being explicit, Claude is forced to look around your codebase more and do its own thinking, which takes up a lot more context window space than if you were just a little bit more clear with a sentence or two. MCP servers load all of the tools available into context by default. So if you have a lot of MCP servers for things that are unrelated to the project, it might be worth turning them off. You can also try out skills, which works similarly to MCP servers, but doesn't put the entire thing into context, saving you space. Subagents run in parallel with your main agent, but has a complete separate context window. So for tasks that require an answer without the journey, like where is the authentication endpoints located, you can have the subagent do the work and return just a summary to your main agent. Managing context within Claude Code is crucial. Use /compact to summarize long sessions, and /clear to start fresh. To use your context window effectively, be specific with what you want. Check what's using your current context window and use subagents to delegate tasks you only need the answer for.
Context management. Context is Claude's working memory. Every file it reads, every command it runs, every message you send, it all takes up space in your context window. So, what is the context window? Think of the context window as the amount of space Claude can hold in its memory. Whenever you enter a prompt, Claude reads a file, runs a tool call, or receives a tool call result. It all adds up in the context window. Since there is a finite amount of space, it becomes important to optimize how you use it. And they provide an illustration describing what they just explained. So that's the context window. And I guess you have to manage what's in this window because it's not going to be able to hold too much information in this window. But I'm pretty sure there's workarounds. I've seen some or I've heard of some using Obsidian. But all right, so what happens when context fills up? When you approach the limit, the context window is automatically compacted. Compaction summarizes important details and removes unnecessary tool call results to free up space. Note that this process can potentially lose details. So they provided an illustration right there. It looks like the commit message is taking up 32 tokens. The debugging is taking up 29 tokens. It's compacting the conversation and then accept the edits. Okay. So they provided another illustration. All right. So commands. You can run compaction manually with the compact command. This compacts everything up to that point. It's handy when you want to free up context space while keeping a memory of what you previously worked on. So here's them running the command. So clear conversation history, but keeps a summary and context optional. If you want to completely start from scratch with no memory of the previous session, run the clear command. This removes everything. And they provide an example of what they're talking about. So basically, it just clears out. It's like basically clearing the cache from your browser. It deletes everything. It doesn't have anything to reference, and you're basically starting from scratch. To check the state of your context, run the context command. You'll get a high-level overview of your context size, the categories taking up the most space, and a visual graphic showing the breakdown. All right, so here's your context window, it's your context usage. This is the model that you're running on Claude. And it looks like gives you a summary of what's taking up the most. So system prompts, system tools, messages. This is the amount of free space. And this is your buffer. All right. When to use which? Here's the general rule of thumb. First, use compact when you're working on a specific feature and running up against the context limit but needs to continue. Keeping the context relevant to your current feature is important. Second, use clear. When you want to start a new feature, you don't want the previous conversation to introduce bias into something new. Excuse me. For things you want Claude to remember across sessions, put them in your claude.md file so it doesn't have to rediscover things from scratch. Tips for saving context space. Be specific. A vague prompt might seem smaller, but it actually costs more context in the long run. Without clear instruction, Claude is forced to explore your codebase more and do its own reasoning, which takes up far more context space than a detailed prompt would. Managing your MCP server. MCP servers load all of their available tools into context by default, even when you're not using them. If you have servers configured for things unrelated to the current project, consider turning them off. You can also try skills, which work similarly to MCP servers but don't load everything into the context upfront. Use subagents. Subagents run in parallel with your main agent but have a completely separate context window. For tasks where you only need the answer, like where are the authentication endpoints located, a subagent does the work and returns just a summary to your main agent, keeping your primary context clean. Recap. Managing context within Claude Code is crucial. Use the compact command to summarize long sessions and the clear command to start fresh. To use your context window effectively, be specific about your prompt. Check what's consuming your current context and use subagents to delegate tasks where you only need the results. Code review. Hold on, did it just do what I thought it just did? Oh, I'm pretty sure someone did that on purpose. All right, so code review. Claude Code has a few built-in features that make your Git workflows faster. Let's go through them. Review with a subagent. Before you push a PR, ask Claude to use a subagent to review your changes. The subagent runs its own context window with fresh eyes. It doesn't carry the bias of the main agent that just spent the session writing the code. When creating a code review or a subagent, restrict it to read-only tools. A reviewer should flag issues, not edit files. Check the subagent's configurations into your repo so your whole team can use the same reviewer. The commit push PR skill. The /commit push PR command skill handles the commit, push, and PR creation all in one step. Instead of doing each manually, just run the skill and Claude takes care of it. If you have a Slack MCP server configured with channels listed in your claude.md file, it will automatically post a PR link to your team's channel. Session linking with from PR. When Claude creates a PR through GHPR create command, this session gets linked to the PR automatically. If you need to come back to it later, maybe to address review comments or fix failing builds. This picks up right where you left off. Recap. Use a subagent for an unbiased code review before pushing. Use the commit push PR command to handle the full commit to PR flow in one step. And use the from PR command to resume work on a PR later. These are small features, but they remove a lot of friction from your daily workflow. All right. So next week, we'll finish this up. I feel that since we're going into subagent skills, MCP, and hooks, this will probably we should probably do this with a fresh mind. So we'll end the stream here. I do appreciate everybody that joined me today. We'll definitely come back next Saturday, and we'll definitely move forward with the Anthropic Academy course materials. And with that said, peace out, everybody, and have a good weekend.